Story 1. I live in an extremely religious community, Mormons, so this happens all the time. I used to try to be vague and give hints, but the best technique I have found is this one. I am kind of a private person, and then I compliment them on something I have noticed. Nice grass, or hey, thanks for checking on me. I know it comes from a good place. Story 2. I'm that neighbor. I'm an older lady who lives alone, and I'm just trying to make a connection with my neighbors. If something happens to me or my pets, I'd like someone nearby to at least notice they haven't seen me in a while or worry about my pets. Wow, thanks for the gifts. Come on over, neighbors. I'm making brownies. Story 3. Wow. The responses, some good, some clearly trying to be funny, but some are disturbing. Look, it is important to be on good, if not friendly terms with your neighbors. You will have them in your life for a long time whether you like it or not. The responses that recommend short, vague answers where you follow up with questions of your own are the best. You may very well discover a new friend, or you may both realize you don't click, and you will naturally not take it any further. But you will be left with a neighbor that is at least on good terms. Remember, they may be the person to notice you being robbed when you are not home, or notice the smoke from a fire first, or be accepting of the noise from a large party you decide to throw. There could be a lot of reasons they are talkative, and not all of them are just being nosy or difficult. They could be genuinely interested, lonely, had a bad neighbor in that house previously, to name a few. Edit. Wow. This really blew up. Thank you for all the awards, gold and silver. That's never happened to me. I've tried to read all the comments, and clearly the whole concept of community, neighbor, friendship, loneliness has struck a nerve. I hope that the original poster finds something useful and relevant to his situation. Story 4. I've learned this lesson the hard way. I've known my neighbor, a 56-year-old man, for around 15 years and considered him a family friend. He watched me grow up, and our families have even taken a vacation together. He was always nosy and asked personal questions, but I shrugged it off as just how he is. That was until my girlfriend, a 20-year-old woman, moved in with us. He slowly became more and more friendly with her, asking where she works, about her family, and gradually changing his personality to match hers. I suspected something was going on. Keep in mind, he is married with a daughter still in high school. One day, I came home from work, and my girlfriend was sharing a beer and talking with him in his garage. Nothing out of the ordinary, as he frequently invited us over for beers and whatnot, so I thought nothing of it. A few days later, my girlfriend came to me in tears. Not of sadness, but frightened tears. After what seemed like forever, she told me that the night she had a beer with him, he told her horrible things, that he wanted to mess her up, steal her, and tie her up. He's thought about breaking into our home and taking advantage of her. He also broke into her car and was leaving her love notes. My once friendly neighbor went crazy. I confronted him about the situation, and he admitted to it and told me I was no good and did not deserve her. Keep in mind, he told me this in his backyard with his wife and daughter at home. Fast forward a month later, and in this time he hasn't shown his face since. My girlfriend gets off work early, and as she is walking into our house, he was hiding in the bushes asking if she was afraid of him. She ran inside and we had to call the police. For the next 2 months, he sat on his property line next to ours with a small foldable chair and just watched our house. So, the best way to deal with an overly nosy neighbor is to cut the conversation short and walk away. Story 5. If you're not very open to chat, just keep things polite yet quick. It's nice to have a good relationship with your neighbors. If they do delve into personal questions, just say, "That's a bit personal. I'd rather not talk about that." The most important thing is to be polite. Don't be rude or act standoffish when it's not necessary. Honestly, just use some common sense. Don't be overly critical is all I'm saying. Story 6. Try having a neighbor who tracks when you leave and arrive back home. Talks to your boss about your work schedule and when you're actually supposed to be at home. Asking my boss if I had COVID-19 when she noticed I hadn't left the house in a couple of days. The list goes on and on. I really hate nosy neighbors. Is your life really that miserable that you have to worry about strangers? I told her off and we are currently looking to move. Some people are just bad neighbors. Story 7. I had an old neighbor like this once. It was back when I lived in a small conservative town in the United States Midwest, still pretty freshly married and also freshly out on my own with my wife. Anyway, my wife and I would always be sitting on the front porch of the place we lived, an upper-lower style duplex. We both worked a lot. Seeing as how we were working minimum wage jobs at the time, we had to work a lot so we could pay bills, eat, and put some money back. So the little time we had to relax and unwind together was pretty precious to us. It still is, to be honest. A few months passed of us living at this place, and one day this very tall, very bald, black man just walked up onto the porch while we were sitting there relaxing. We had a pretty good amount of sketchy people see us on the porch and either ask us to bum smokes, if they could have some loose change, or if we knew where to get any good drugs. I only mention his race because this is a very conservative town in the pretty rural Midwest. We kind of looked at each other and him as he was walking up and said, "Hi, how are you?" Not knowing what to expect. He replied, "Hey, how y'all doing tonight? My name is Thomas, but y'all can just call me T. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I live in that house right over there." He held his arm up and flipped his hand down to point at a nearby house very effeminately. "And I just wanted to come meet the neighbors and let y'all know if you need anything ever. Just let me know. Welcome to the neighborhood." Us. "Oh hey, thanks for introducing yourself, man. My name is Atlas is my son, and this is my wife. Atlas is also my son. That's very cool of you to walk over here and do that. We've only met our upstairs neighbor so far, and that's because I work with him and we have some beers with him occasionally. We think the neighborhood is nice so far, etc., etc." Small talk. His response to this, to me, was, "Ooh, you mind if I come and smoke a cigarette with y'all and talk for a second? I'll fill y'all in on all the dirty details of the neighborhood. Nothing too bad. Really, sorry, it's not dirty, but I'll just tell y'all a little about the other neighbors." Being too polite to say no so far at this point. "Yeah, sure. Come on up and have a seat wherever you'd like." So he grabbed a chair beside me and sat down. Looking at my wife, "So, are you two really married?" Us. Holding hands and wearing our wedding bands. "Yeah. Working on our first year pretty soon." Thomas. Still looking at my wife. "Emmepit girl, you are one lucky lady to be married to a man that looks as good as this. I'm not gay or anything, but girl, if you didn't say you were married just now, I'd be trying to get him to drink some beers with me right now." Now looking at me, bashfully, he. Anyway, I'd say anywhere from once a week to once every few months, Thomas would randomly see us sitting on the porch and come up and make vague flirtatious remarks to me and tell us how wonderful we were and how happy he was that we were neighbors. He eventually came out to us officially and was so happy that we were still accepting of him, even though he was a sinner. He cried and told us we were the biggest blessing he ever had in his life. Many times he was annoying, and we just wanted to sit on our porch alone and enjoy the peace and quiet. But as a gay black man in a small, mainly white, very conservative town, he needed our support more than we needed the peace and quiet those nights. And oddly enough, even though he wasn't an incredibly bright man in a lot of regards, he always seemed to say something that was incredibly insightful and thoughtful to what was going on with us, either at work or with distant relatives, or something that there was literally no possible way of him knowing about us, and he always said it about himself. He drank too much and smoked too much weed, but he was always just looking to escape the pain of literally everyone being unaccepting of who he was as a person, and him just wanting to be liked. Anyway, there isn't a happy ending or a sad one. My wife and I moved back out west to be near family and finish school after we had our daughter, and that was the last I heard from Thomas. We exchanged phone numbers so that we could stay in touch, but he never contacted me, and the 2 times I tried to contact him, he was out of minutes or had maybe gotten a new phone number. Story 8. I made friends with my neighbor at the beginning of lockdown. Now, whenever I go out in front of my house, he comes out. Every single time. Even when we just open our front door, he comes out and just sits. One time, Amazon dropped a package off when I was working on the side of the house. He opened his window and proceeded to yell to me that Amazon had delivered a package. I don't go out of the front door anymore unless I'm going to my car. I just hang out around the back and even take my dogs on walks, leaving and arriving through the backyard. Story 9. I've always just casually said, that's personal. When said with a smile, it usually works. Thanks for the awards. Some people have pointed out that kind of isn't necessary, and in a sense, they're right. It's just how my speech usually sounds, and I find that kind of is easier to say as a non-confrontational person. Story 10. My partner and I just moved into a house and got cornered by a neighbor for 30 minutes. My Midwest sense of guilt needs to clarify a few things. We were on our way to do stuff when this neighbor started talking and didn't stop for 30 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. Half an hour, non-stop talking at us, not with us. We tried every little polite out we could take. Plenty of well-s and that's crazy-s and even a few we should really get going-s. I even started leading the conversation into the middle of the street, hoping a passing car would separate us. None of it worked. We only finally made it out of there because it got dark. I've decided the next time this happens, I'm just going to tell her politely, but firmly, that I need to use the bathroom and then walk away. Edit. The replies to this are hilarious. I tried every single one of these things. I have no explanation why it took so long to finally end the conversation. Story 11. First, I must say, many of the answers here made my day. Funny people today. Anyways, I am generally a magnet for odd people, so I have a lot of experience with this. The simplest way to deal with a nosy person is to turn a lot of the questions back at them. Oh, thanks for asking, but I really need to know where you bought that fern. It's so neat looking. Oh, my job is boring. Tell me what you do for a living. Most of these busybodies are looking for information to tell others. They're so bored with their lives, they have to know everyone else's business. Either turn the question back at them or practice giving vague answers that say nothing. Oh, we've been married a while. You know, time flies. If you can't or don't want to talk to them, make sure you have very visible headphones on, even if you're not actually listening to anything. Don't remove them when they speak to you. Either just lift one each time they speak or leave them on and respond really uncomfortably loud. Occasionally misunderstand what they said because you couldn't hear them. If they push it, say you're listening to classes to learn a foreign language for work. The boss put you on a deadline to learn it. Pick an obscure language. If all that doesn't work with those extra special nosy people, start feeding them really strange information that they'll sound weird repeating to the neighbors. Of course, the best remedy is to just talk to them for a minute, then excuse yourself and tell them you really have to get back to whatever you're doing. Then step away. But it's sometimes fun to mess with the annoying ones. Story 12. Look, honestly, I have very poor social awareness and no filter at all, so they would probably hear about how my chronic illnesses have resulted in constipation so bad that I have to be on laxatives for 6 months to restart my bowels and the consequences that all of this has on my sex life. I fully accept that I am the reason that I have very few friends. Story 13. I don't mind overly friendly neighbors as much. Giving a short, vague answer to certain questions you're not comfortable with is probably best. The problem I have currently with a new neighbor is that they are not respectful of others' space or property. They have over 7 adults and 5 minors living in the house. Cars are parked in front of my home, recreational vehicles, and an old scrap car in their driveway, which is a city violation. They let their kids run all around my driveway, play with my doorbell, and throw rotten fruit in my backyard. One of the adult men likes to leave his trash in front of my driveway and constantly yells at night. He power washes all of his cars and recreational vehicles close to my driveway all day. Several neighbors I have spoken to have had nothing but negative things to say about them, but no one does anything about it. I try to actively ignore people like this, as they are renting the home and I have no idea how long for. But my patience is running thin. Story 14. I think maybe they are not so much intrusive, just trying to spark a conversation. I would stop what you are doing, give them 5 minutes of undivided attention. You do not have to reveal too much, just get to know each other, then wrap it up with an, "All right, good to see you. I have to get back to this." Story 15. I bought 86 acres in the middle of nowhere. My closest neighbor is 1.5 miles away. So far, it seems to be working, just got to get the house built. Laugh out loud. Story 16. Gray rock. Keep your answers short, simple, and vague. Examples. What did you do this weekend? Not much. The conversation will eventually fizzle out, and they'll get the hint. Story 17. I moved. It was to the point she had binoculars out watching us. I have anxiety and can't do anything if someone watches me. I love woodworking and working on cars. I could do neither without her sitting on her porch and watching me. My yard wasn't big enough to build a garage, so I had to work outside. She would catch you outside and talk for 30 minutes. On the plus side, we made a lot of cash off the house sale. Moving to a house with 2 garages and only one neighbor a couple of hundred yards away,